Yeah, I'ma say it. The hottest takes of hot takes right here. I think that the Jué fight is very disappointing and honestly may as well be the worst fight in Wuthering Waves. Alright, that's all I need to say. I'm not going to rationalize as to why, I just wanted to tell you what I think, okay? Alright, bye bye. Wait, you're still here? What? I've said all that I need to say. I guess you need more, huh? Fine. Where do I start? Let's see. You know what? Let's start from the beginning. So, with PGR's 3rd anniversary event going on, us PGR players have been eating. I mean, we got a free S-rank character that also just debuted in this patch. She's free through the dorm commission system, by the way. We also got a really cool skin for her alongside her weapon skin that are also free, which is through the special dispatch event, and a bunch of other free stuff. But most importantly, we got the Lamia boss fight update. This may as well be a prelude to the next update after this patch, which has me all the more excited for our Ascendant Fish to finally come home. Anyway, Lamia's fight update did a few things. It slightly updated her moveset to be more aggressive and violent, befitting of her Ascendant rank. It's not a complete overhaul like what they did with the Iron Maiden Phantom version, but it's certainly a welcome update to a fight that many PGR players would point to be one of the more unique and iconic boss fight experiences in the game. The set pieces, the story, the music, and the fight itself came together so beautifully, it's hard not to forget such an experience that was carefully crafted by Kuro. Now, don't get me wrong, back then the fight was great, but at the same time something felt lacking. Not that it was ever a problem, but that's where this boss fight update comes in. Lamia is much more aggressive, the pacing's faster, and the fight is overall more intense. Also, it comes with a banger soundtrack by Vanguard Sound Studio, who updated their already banger track to be even more of a banger. Look, I don't even know how that's possible, but that's Vanguard for you. Anyway, so what happened was that I went and tried out the new event with the new Lamia fight, and what I did was use Alpha Crimson Weave and ended up deleting every single level. Easy. All except for the bonus level, which honestly is where the real boss fight is at. The Tsunami level. You see, all of the other levels skipped the second phase for some odd reason. I mean, the second phase is what made Lamia's fight so good. It was a fight that clearly put Lamia in her element. Well, when I played the Tsunami level, I understood why it was left out. The second phase was way more violent and aggressive, and I realized that I was fighting an uphill battle, even while using Crimson Weave and 21. As much as it was challenging, it was also engaging and ultimately fun. But you know what hung over my mind the whole time I was fighting Lamia? It's been living rent-free in my mind. It's the fact that the Jué fight has nothing on this, which is what inspired me to make this video in the first place. So, with that anecdote out of the way, let's talk about why the Jué fight is disappointing, and to dig deeper, have a bit of a dialogue about the weekly bosses in this game. By the way, you may think that this is an opinion that comes from a PGR player, which, yes, it is, but it's not only that. This is also an opinion as a Monster Hunter player as well. The reason why this is important is because of the parallels Jué seems to have with some of the more annoying bosses Monster Hunter monsters possess. It should help you paint a better picture. Just a little bit of a side note, I will say that all of the gripes that I will talk about could be circumvented by throwing on a Jinsei and deleting this dragon from existence, but not everyone has a Jinsei. Hard pill to swallow, I know. So what I decided to do was test this whole fight out with some other characters that I have because I wanted to experience this fight as, well, a fight. And man, does this fight drag. And I am well aware that the team I'm using is nowhere near built, nor does it have any synergy, but my focus is on the boss itself and the mechanics. So let's talk about the fundamental issues with Jué, at least in my humble opinion. The first thing we need to talk about is that the boss barely has any interesting movesets. It has variations of a tail attack, it has some magic missiles that don't even hit, it has a laser beam, a parryable slither attack, and the occasional sword attack. I mean, the bigger issue seems to be the fact that it feels like the boss almost never hits you, all the while moving from place to place as if it's moving on some predetermined path that felt too inorganic and video gamey. Worse yet, it's annoying to hit the boss because you're constantly chasing after it, and sometimes it just flies. Quite ironic really, you'd think a giant beast would be so easy to hit because it's big. But then again, it flies, so maybe not so easy. Though, it's extremely annoying nevertheless. Well, hang on, technically Lamia does that a lot too. Yes, at least in the second phase she swims around the map much like how Jué flies around, but here's the difference. The map is smaller and at times she literally comes to you, not to mention she can actually hit you. As for the case of Lamia swimming around, when it comes to the second phase, you have to deal with an onslaught of attacks and a lot of parryables. So for her case, instead of it being annoying, Lamia swimming around is more like a moment of reprieve to grab your bearings before the next barrage of parryable attacks. And even then, you still need to pay attention because she could stick a harpoon in you while she's swimming around, or she could rush you like crazy. Unlike the magic missiles that don't really do much in the way of damage and are easy to avoid in the dumbest way possible. I mean, I literally avoided them not because I was doing it on purpose, but because I was chasing Jué. And look, if you're going to say that when Jué flies, that's her moment of reprieve, well, if that's the case, that moment is too long to a point where I feel like I'm more or less doing nothing other than, I guess, chasing it. Then there's the grapple issue. Normally I'd have no issue with the grapple because it's the best way to circumvent having to travel across the country to poke Jué with a stick. But the issue here is that it's so jank that at times, it leaves you in the air, which results in making you waste too much time as you'll end up doing a plunging attack. By then, you'll have a few seconds to do some DPS before it dips. The reason why it is the way it is because the grapple point seems to be in an elevated position and is always stuck on Jué's head. Either way, it's so frustrating that there are times where I can't do my full DPS cycle because Jué flies away just cuz. Honestly, you're better off swapping characters when your concerto gauge is up because at least it sometimes keeps you grounded. Besides, if you're working on stacking buffs in a rotation, you're probably already doing that. I remember thinking to myself before experiencing the fight that this was going to take on a Monster Hunter feel. The scale, the music, everything just screamed Monster Hunter. I mean, if we want to talk about wire bugs, sure, we can. But it also shares some other characteristics that are annoying in Monster Hunter. I'm looking at you, A2 Kushala. Though, the biggest difference between the two games is that in Monster Hunter, I can do something about it, like flash bugs. I mean, me and my group used smoke bombs in the Fatalis fight when transitioning from the first phase to the second phase to force Fatalis to the ground. Now, you might be thinking, wow, someone is complaining about a flying dragon being able to fly. Yes, that's exactly what I'm complaining about. Truth be told, I don't exactly have a big issue with flying monsters. I think it's cool. I mean, Valstrax is a good example. But for the most part, flying monster encounters aren't always fun to deal with. Most of the time, it's just straight up annoying. Looking at you again, A.T. Kushala. Besides, as much as the flying monsters are annoying to deal with in Monster Hunter, as I mentioned earlier, you can do something about it. And at least the fight is very active as they actually try to hit you. So that's a fight for sure. And when it comes to a moment of reprieve, there are specific Monster Hunter mechanics that balance out certain hard fights, whether it be moving to a new zone, or exhaustion, or stuns, but these mechanics are designed specifically to Monster Hunter and probably have no place in WoWa. I just wanted to pull out an example on how Monster Hunter balances their flying monster encounters as a reference for balance. Then there's the other tool that you would think would be useful, but it's kinda useless. I'm talking about the lock-on. Now, this is less of a Jué issue and more of a game problem, so I'm not going to dive deeper into this. I'll just say that if you fought monsters of this nature in other games, you should already know that the lock-on isn't always your best friend. Either way, there's a sense of hopelessness that I have with fighting Jué, which ends up being annoying to deal with, and ultimately not fun. Which is sad because remember, this is a Sentinel. This dragon should be a pinnacle fight on epic proportions. At the very least, the spectacle is cool when you challenge Jué for the first time, but it's not worth its weight in a fight. I mean, the new tiger monster thing was way more fun by comparison. Now, I'm not asking for the fight to be harder, no. I'm asking for a fight to be an actual fight. I believe that a fight of this caliber should have a back and forth where both the player and the boss are being pressured to act. That's not being hard, that's being engaging. Looking back in that respect, I know I started this video talking about how Lamia Tsunami mode inspired me to make this video, but I'll be honest here. It's technically an outlier as it is the tippy top difficulty PGR had to offer for Lamia, but what stood out to me was how fun and engaging the Lamia boss fight was regardless of difficulty. Besides, if I had to compare boss fights, we should also probably talk about Lithos because that's a boss fight that is more similar to Jué. After all, Lithos does have similar moves like a tail attack, a laser beam, and he slithers around. Oh yeah, Lithos also has the spectacle part down. Thing is, the pacing of the fight is faster and way more intense. Also, Lithos has a grab, so that's another thing to worry about. Now, imagine if Jué had a grab that's similar to Safijiva's grab. If you know what I'm talking about, well, you know. But yeah, the fight in of itself is quite brutal, and there's not that much downtime compared to what goes on with Jué. Also, about the magic missile situation, I mean look at this. Pretty cool, right? Sure, it's a one-time thing only, and the story Jué also has that. Well, sort of. It's just a transition to the bullet hell section, but imagine if we had that specific move in that regular fight all the time. Not talking about the bullet hell, just that transition part but with missiles. Like Lithos. That'd be awesome. If anything, I think Jué should be somewhat similar to Lithos. Certainly not at the difficulty that Lithos provides and definitely not a carbon copy, but similar in nature. Regardless, I feel like the issues I've talked about for Jué still remains, though at the same time I'll admit, I've also been influenced by recency bias through the Lamia fight. Truth be told, I just like the Lamia fight. I mean, the Lamia boss fight is easy, even when I'm not using Crimson Weave. In fact, I enjoy using any other character against her for that matter, and it's really fun. And again, for Monster Hunter, the flying wyverns are annoying, but they're fundamentally easy to deal with. Except this asshole. But while we're on this topic, I guess we also need to have a conversation about difficulty. Jué is a weekly boss that yields weekly reward materials that would be used to upgrade your character to be stronger. This is also a gacha game, so there's an expectation that at some point, we'll most likely end up being so powerful we could probably nuke a boss Genshin style. I've mentioned earlier that I used Crimson Weave to nuke Lamia during the Abyssal Melody event. This is normal. Also, my Jinshi also nukes too, so it's already a thing in Wuthering Waves. The thing is that a weekly boss should be the type of boss that's definitely a step above the other bosses in the world, but should be easy enough to clear as the materials they drop are essential. But my problem with Jué is that even without nuking the dragon, the fight is just boring and annoying given the issues I've mentioned earlier. Heck, I struggle to even call it a fight. Looking at the other weekly bosses, the Dreamless is somewhat fun and arguably is a flying monster done well. Then, when we look at the Scarf fight, I would go as far as to say that this is one of the best bosses they've made in Wuba. Multiple phases, a moveset that is balanced with aggression, and is always engaging no matter what. A boss fight that truly deserves to be called a fight, especially when we compare him to Jué. Heck, I'd even go as far as to say that the big fuck off turtle is much more fun than Jué. I mean, if anything, that turtle is an actual Monster Hunter fight. Comes with some part breaking and mounting, or whatever this is. By the way, the turtle's name is clearly Misha. I mean, he's a bellboy, he does a bunch of ice attacks, and follows the path of getting destroyed, haha! But I think this touches upon a fundamental problem regarding the weekly bosses. There are no challenge modes for these weekly bosses. Maybe the difficulty for the bosses are actually just right, and what's missing is that there's no challenge mode for those who want to see these bosses at their best. At least we have holograms for the world bosses to bang our heads on. You see, the thing about holograms is that at their peak, they pull out the true potential of the bosses, but they work into the bone to climb up the tiers to really get a grasp of what they're really capable of. It's like I've worked so hard to learn so much about their moveset that once I hit their final form, I'm in for the fight of my life. Really, I think I'm filled with a lot of disappointment because I feel like they could do more with Jué, and that they haven't really reached Jué's full potential. Ultimately, I think we should have some kind of separate challenge level or hologram activity for these weekly bosses. It doesn't even have to look like the hologram activity. Just put in another Sonorosphere and call it a day. Besides, I'm sure some of us would want to see Jué at the height of its power much like the other hologram bosses. As for the regular weekly boss form, at least give Jué some more updated moves to match the majesty of its hype. Remember, this isn't just some random monster, it's a sentinel. We should be witnessing some crazy powers like time manipulation stuff or what have you. I don't want to be dodging the same tail attack for the 1500th time. That, and for the love of God, please let me hit the dragon. Look, at the very least, make this fight less annoying. I don't even mind if you make the weekly boss easier, but if that's the case, we definitely deserve a trade-off on having some kind of challenge version of the boss. Overall, I think Kuro has been doing a good job with Wuthering Waves through its 1.1 patch, but the Jué fight has been living rent-free in my mind in the worst possible way to a point where I needed to talk about this. The Krallis hologram was excellent, and the Lamia Tsunami fight was what I needed, but when I'm fighting them, I can't help but compare them to the Jué fight and think that the Jué fight was disappointing. And I'm sure people would say that I can't expect much out of a fight that is still part of what is essentially the prologue of the story. Sure. But, I mean, I think that the Dreamless fight is a much better fight by comparison. I could even go further and say that the Scar fight was peak, so I think I could expect something at that level, if not more. That said, I don't think that this one fight reflects on Wuthering Waves as a whole. I mean, every hologram is already a showcase of Kuro's excellence, and as I mentioned earlier, the Scar and Dreamless fights were pretty banger. I just want to talk about my personal gripe with this one thing that maybe other people are fine with, and it comes from a place where I've experienced what they had to offer in PGR. So I hope in the future we can get to the point where we start getting insane boss encounters, just like what we are getting in PGR right now. And don't get me wrong, there are some pretty bad fights in PGR, like really bad. But most of the bad ones are the early bosses, and the later patches gave us some crazy bosses. It's almost as if we're playing a different game. Either way, Kuro isn't perfect. Not everything they put out is going to hit, and much like Jué's attacks, not everything is going to hit everyone. But you know what you should hit? That like and subscribe. Anyway, with all that said, I wonder, am I the only one with this sentiment? What do you think? Do you agree or disagree with me? Throw your thoughts down in the comment section below because I'm curious about what you all think about this. Either way, I'm still excited to see what other fights they'll give us. And while we're talking about what they'll give us in the future, you know what also hung over my mind? If they put their mind to it, I kind of want to see Kuro make a Monster Hunter-like game. I mean, they experimented with this idea in PGR, so it's not that much of a stretch. Oh, and it'd also be cool if they made a 2D combat platformer. What they did with some of their dungeons in buildup made me want to see more of that kind of stuff. But hey, rumor has it that Kuro is trying to make some kind of Gravity Rush kind of game, so that's pretty exciting to see. Anyway, that's all I have to say, so see you in the next one. Bye!